Hey everyone, have you ever forgotten what you studied the night before and now you're sitting looking at an exam and don't know what to answer? Did you ever forget what comes next when you were doing a presentation or somebody's name or where you left your keys? Well, not being able to remember stuff is stressful, and when you're stressed, it's more difficult to remember stuff. And this is why we have invited Brent Sverdlov to be our guest today. Brent is the author of How Could I Forget You, as well as a national speaker helping people to remember things. And it's really great to have you here today, Brent. Thanks for being with us.
No, thanks for inviting me, Jordan. It's great to be here with you.
If somebody turns this video off in the next 60 seconds, what would be the headline for how to remember stuff better?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure, but I'll try to answer that. I would say it's bringing order out of chaos by using your imagination. If you ever saw the movie Mary Poppins, and you remember the way that she snapped her fingers and tidied up and everything flew into its proper place, that's what I can teach you how to do with my memory methods.
Do you remember how you became a memory expert?
I can remember where it all started. Yes, it was a long time ago. It was in eighth grade in a junior high school English class. We had a substitute teacher come in. Her name was Mrs. Barnhouse, and she told us to put away our English books and that she was going to teach us something that they should teach us in school, but they don't, which is how to use our memory more effectively. And she taught us a very simple list of 10 words. And after a few minutes, we all knew the words backwards and forwards and by position on the list. And I was just entranced by it. And I ran out to the mall, which is what you did back in the 70s. And I bought a copy of the Memory Book, which has been my Bible ever since. And that's by Harry Lorayne and Jerry Lucas. It was published back in the early 70s. And it teaches you how to remember anything you need: facts, figures, names, faces, basketball plays, dance moves, important dates, historical events, really anything you need. It was a very good Bible. And it's still very much in use today. It's a little bit dated, a little bit on PC, a little corny, but a great thing. So I wound up using these techniques all through high school and through college. I memorized just reams and reams of information from history, foreign language vocabulary, people's names that I had met. And I was able to finish exams in much less time than everybody else and get high scores. And also, most importantly, not be as anxious as I used to be when I was a test taker.
Are there specific strategies, suggestions that you have that can help people remember things they've read in a book or from their notes or from a lecture?
So let's say, for example, that you have to memorize the capitals of all 50 US states. And a lot of people don't know this. We were supposed to know when we were kids, supposed to learn it. People don't use it and they tend to forget it. But it can be overwhelming to think, I have to learn 50 of these. But if you break it down state by state, start with the easy ones first. And when I say easy ones, I mean the ones that are most evocative, that the name of the state sounds like something that you already know and have a concrete association with. So let's say, for example, Nebraska. Let's start with that. Capital of Nebraska is Lincoln. So everybody has a picture of Lincoln. When you say Lincoln, they think of, the president in his long black coat with a top hat and his beard. So you have to link Lincoln to Nebraska in some way. So Nebraska, if you break it down, it sounds like new brass car. Right? If you play with words and think like, how would a child hear something abstract and make sense of it? So it kind of, if you take the main consonants in that term, in that state word, Nebraska, it sounds like a new brass car. So if you can link Lincoln and Nebraska, a new brass car, with some crazy imagery, using as many senses as you can, you won't forget it. So what I think of is President Lincoln gets into a shiny new brass car. Maybe it's brass because it's got brass instruments glued all over it. It's got trumpets and trombones and tubas. And there's Lincoln, like some cool dude driving down the street in his brass car with all the horns going off. Imagine if you could hear trumpets and trombones and all these different sounds of brass instruments. So if you can see it, if you can smell the exhaust of the car, if you can see Lincoln waving, you feel a breeze as the car drives by you, as many senses as you can work in, the more vivid it'll be. And you'll remember that.
What about another endeavor that a lot of students and professionals have to do, and that is public speaking. When I teach public speaking strategies, specifically reducing the stress of public speaking, I would say one of the most common questions is, how do I remember what I'm supposed to say next? Or I have 5 points that I really have to get across. How am I supposed to remember to talk about all of them? So any strategies for those goals?
Well, I mean, you can cheat on this one, because if you're giving a presentation with, say, PowerPoint, you can put your points up on the screen and refer to them. And you don't need every single word. You really just need a couple of words as a trigger. You can also use acronyms or acrostics too. Like if you're talking about the Great Lakes as your topic, a lot of us learned in school that if you remember the word Homes, Homes, you can recall the names of Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. So maybe there's a word you can come up with that reminds you of things. Something that the ancient Greeks and Romans used to use was something called the memory palace, which I think is popularized now in a Sherlock Holmes TV show. And a memory palace can take on a lot of different forms. So for example, what the ancient orators used to do was do a mental map of a space they knew well, like a house or a civic building or a public park. And they would associate each idea or a trigger word with each space. And they would do a mental walkthrough of it as they were giving their speech. And then one idea would lead to the next, and to the next, and to the next.
The next area of memory, which is one that really hits home with me because it's one I have a lot of trouble with and I feel like I shouldn't, that is remembering people's names and going even further, things that they have told you about themselves.
Ask somebody about their name. Ask them a question, just like you ask somebody, are you from here? Where did you go to school? What kind of food do you like? What are your hobbies? Ask them about their name. Everybody has a backstory to their name. It's amazing what comes out of people's mouths of who they were named for, that there was a different name that were going to be given. But it becomes actually a very interesting part of the conversation that can make it as memorable as anything else. But there's also another component too, which I go into detail in my book, which is about how to link the name to the person's physical appearance. And that's longer than we can have time to get into now, but you do have to make a visual association between how the name sounds to you and what the person looks like. So there's that going on too. And the nice thing is when you ask somebody a question about their name, that buys you some more time. So you have a chance to truly look at the person. A lot of us are very visually illiterate. We see faces all the time, but we're bad like at eyewitness identification. We just don't, we see, but we don't look. It's like hearing, but not listening. So we really need to heighten how much attention we pay to people so that we can really engage with them.
I'm guessing you're going to have some different suggestions about this fourth area. Remembering where you put stuff. So keys, your wallet, a business card that you took, a book, whatever it might be. What are some ways to help with that increasingly challenging area?
I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody has trouble with this. It must just be you. Yeah. Well, there's certain things that people tend to misplace often, and those are things like keys and a wallet, glasses. And the easy answer to that is have a designated space for them. So like when you come in your house, have a little side table. You can even, I know some people who've even drawn circles on it. Keys go here. It's like a landing pad. It's got to go right there. Otherwise, they just go flying, who knows where. We forget about these things because they're such routine actions that we become absent-minded. We usually do it when we're doing or thinking about something else, and that's why we forget where we put them. So I know people who've been looking around for their glasses for hours and they're on top of their head, right? The whole time. A pencil's behind their ear. The keys are actually in their hand, but they're looking somewhere else. There are visualization techniques that you can use for that as well. If there's something you're likely to forget, actually, here's something people often forget. Did I lock the front door of my house when I left this morning? So let's take that as an example. So, because it involves keys. So if you're likely to forget that, when you leave the house, when you put the key inside the lock, as you're turning it, really exaggerate the motion of doing that. Like, imagine that you're turning the knob so hard it breaks off in your hand. or it bursts into flames, or it just explodes. I mean, something really crazy and impossible. Because then if you're aware at that moment that you're doing that, hours later when you're at work or school and you wonder if you locked the door, you'll remember that crazy thing of the explosion or the breaking off or the flames because you conjured it up with your own imagination.
Brent Sverdlov is a memory expert extraordinaire, the author of How Could I Forget You, the master of the flexyourmemory.com website, which you should check out. And he helps people remember things. And we are so lucky to have had him with us today to help us do the same. Brent, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great talking with you.